The origin of critical research into the life of Jesus is usually identified with the work of Hermann Samuel Reimarus, who lived in the late 17th century and the early 18th century. Reimarus was a rationalist thinker and a teacher of Near Eastern languages in Hamburg, Germany. Between 1774 and 1778, Gotthold Lessing published seven lengthy excerpts from Reimarus' defense of rationalist religion without revealing Reimarus' name. Two of these fragments considered the aims of Jesus and his disciples and the story of the resurrection. Their publication aroused a storm of controversy and shattered untroubled acceptance of the gospel as historical documents. Now, Reimarus distinguished between the aims of Jesus and the later aims of his disciples. According to him, Jesus was a messianic pretender who preached the nearness of the kingdom of heaven in a political, nationalistic sense. The desired popular response failed to materialize, and Jesus was executed, his last words being an admission of failure. Now, Reimarus is referring to Matthew 27:46, where Jesus on the cross cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" These words are actually from Psalm 22 in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. So Jesus' repeating them is not necessarily an admission of failure, but he was following his custom of using the scriptures to interpret his circumstances. The Psalms begin this way with words of grief, but they end in hope. No, the psalm ends in hope. Jesus doubtless knew the psalm quite well, and it begins with sorrow but ends with hope. Now, going back to Reimarus, Jesus' disciples who shared their master's hope were totally unprepared for his death. After Jesus' death, they had recourse to a different strand of Jewish messianic expectation. Okay, so Reimarus is making the claim that Jesus had a particular view of the Messiah, and that the Messiah was going to be a ruler in a political sense. But he's saying, well, his disciples after his death identified with a different strand of messianic expectation. They turned to an apocalyptic strand of hope for a Messiah who would come twice, first in human weakness, excuse me, then in divine glory. So Reimarus claimed that his disciples stole Jesus' body and waited 50 days, and then proclaimed his resurrection from the dead and imminent return in power. Soon his death was proclaimed a redemptive event. That's this idea that Jesus' death is for us and for our sins. Now, Reimarus erred in many respects, especially in attributing nationalistic ideas to Jesus and deliberate deception to his disciples. But his work remains important, however, for having forcefully questioned the relationship of what would later be called the historical Jesus and the relationship of the historical Jesus to the Christ of faith. After Reimarus, most of the scholarly literature either worked on harmonizing the Gospels or people wrote rationalist lives of Jesus. That's Jesus is trying to write Gospels where they could rationalize everything and remove all the supernatural occurrences.